A decision that will shape the United States economy is happening in 3 days. And the big thing about all of this is it's not in the Federal Reserve. It's not because of a policy that Donald Trump is enacting. No, no, no. It's a ruling from the Supreme Court. And it's all about the tariffs. This is going to change how the global economic landscape is going to look for the rest of 2026 and beyond, because Donald Trump, when he first came into office, made a huge decision to increase those tariffs across the board, and specifically attacking those tariffs or attaching those tariffs to countries like China, Russia, and others who have potentially been negative towards the United States. So this ruling that's going to be happening is going to be absolutely massive, not only because of what it can mean for potential implications on, let's say, just the overall economy, but also in the landscape going forward, because now we're going to start to see whether or not Donald Trump can actually implement policies without any potential governmental interference or blocking, right? Because there's going to be a lot of, let's say, a lot of things that come about, right? Markets are going to react on how Trump's going to call for 10% credit card rate cap on Monday. There's going to be the CPI stuff, but the Supreme Court ruling that's going to be happening on Wednesday as to whether or not tariffs are going to be, quote unquote, remain legal is going to be interesting, because now we've seen the amount of United States GDP start to come in, be absolutely huge. We've also seen Trump hint at, hey, if we're saving so much in tax dollars, we might give a $2,000 stimulus to those to help stimulate the economy, similar to what we saw a couple years ago for the cerveza sickness. So, now that we're starting to see how this is, I guess, playing out, it shows that the Fed, the economic policies, there is no bipartisan, avenue to any of this, right? It all has to do with politics at the end of the day, because let's just face it, we know that the reality is that if politics and if the economy is doing well, the political party in power is going to most likely stay in power because of how these things are playing out and, the economic cycles that we run into. So Supreme Court ruling on this is really no different, because now they've held off, they've pushed it back just a week, but they have not ruled whether or not it's legal for this to happen. The markets are waiting for this decision to see how it could impact. And the court has the option to grant limited powers, which I think is very interesting. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he expects a mismatch on this potential ruling, because let's just face it, right? I mean, whatever Donald Trump has done, the other political parties have, essentially tried to, I guess, slow him down in a sense, right? But let's just look at the facts here, right? The dollar last year had one of its worst years, down over 9% throughout the calendar year of 2025. Year to date, it is up a little bit, so it is off to a better start, whereas last year we had a terrible start. A lot of people are blaming that based on the tariffs that we saw, but let's just face the numbers, right? How did the US GDP do in 2025 because since tariffs, right? When we saw those implemented, GDP grew about 1.5 to 2% with all of that, right? So we saw, okay, the economy was rising. It did a little bit better, right? Even though there was a hiring slowdown, there has been a lot of mixed masses in the overall economy when it came to this. And a lot of people just pointed the finger to the tariffs, right? Because they said, oh, this is a big reason why there's been, this was the most major change. But the reality is that a lot of the money printing and the policies that we saw, kind of come to light in 2024 is what we saw the reasoning for the economy in 2025. They say usually it takes about 12 to 18 months to see the effects of those policies kind of come to light in the economy. So we still haven't even seen 12 months of the tariff policies. Granted, Trump has moved very quickly with all of these things and basically gone from literally 0 to 100 really quickly. So I'm not saying that we haven't seen any effects on the tariffs just yet, but I'm saying the jury should still be out, right? And let's just face it, there's, when we look around the landscape, we look around to how that's going, right? It is something that we need to continue to look at and watch, because this January pause that we have coming up here, there's essentially a 95% chance this is going to come true, right? 95.6% chance. So while we keep looking at how this is going, the Fed futures, they're all looking at this and saying, hey, this is something that is showing for the potential easing cycle, right? This FOMC announcement that's going to come through, the Fed funds rate, it's going to probably most likely stay, right? But Trump is pushing for lower interest rates. And, the Fed officials forecast this bold plan, and everybody is saying in this bold plan, right, that the overall US GDP is going to see a bit of a slowdown in 26. And a big part is because that interest rate environment. So we're going to be keeping a very close eye on this, because it affects markets, it affects mortgage rates, it affects all these different things. And the amount of liquidity in the market is a big, issue. And Trump believes that these tariff policies and the interest rates essentially go hand in hand, because, the tariffs make it harder to outsource and obtain a lot of the cheaper labor that we could have from overseas. And so in order to fund that labor here in the United States, we need lower interest rates so businesses can theoretically start to build more factories, push all those things, forward in the United States. Whereas, it is going to take some time for the US to build more factories, to come up and come away from this global based economy and move for a more of an America first type of movement, right? So, the reality is that the tariffs and the interest rate policy all play a very big role in the global economy. And the biggest thing is just making sure that we can, see if there is some sort of like bipartisan way to rule against this, because the Supreme Court even talking about this, in my opinion, just kind of puts a little damper on it. Look, I don't like a lot of what Trump does with, let's say, what he does when he's trying to pressure those to get them to lower interest rates right off the jump as well. Like, I don't think that's an overall positive for the market. And, some of these, let's say, some decisions to be made, right? Because you want these policies to be in the best interest. And the problem is that when we have these 4-year cycles, 2-year cycles actually, to keep certain people in power, right? I think we run into making just decisions for the short term and not for the best long-term health. Granted, there are positives and negatives to all of it, right? But I think the Supreme Court ruling will play a big role in how the U.S. looks at their spending plans in 2026, which will play a big role in GDP numbers, which will play a big role in how the market looks. I mean, it's all this trickle down effect, right? And I mean, we've already got the market at all-time highs. We're going to get 7,000 S&P 500 here at some point, right? We hit it at the highest close ever on Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see especially with some bullish news from what we've got here coming up this week, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a 7,000 S&P 500 at some point this week. I mean, just look at the facts here, folks. We've got this, and if this ruling says Trump has to, let's say, put down the tariffs, Would that be bullish or would that be something that's bearish? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat what you guys think. But I do believe, my personal opinion is that the market would look at this as a bullish thing if we got the tariffs down, because the market has had some sort of strain here. The jobs market isn't great. There's a lot of underlying factors here in the US that really just seem to, I guess, give the negative perception. I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at the Bears, right, the Bears are going to call it literally everything. They're going to be calling out that it's in a bear market. The Bulls are going to say it's all bullish. It's really just how the market reacts. And I think when you take a step back and look, right, we had gold running hot at all-time highs. We had silver running hot at all-time highs, absolutely cranking. The S&P 500 cranking. So at the end of the day, all of this has been bullish for investments. But will that continue into 26? I'm going to be following all of that. Make sure you guys are subscribed, hitting that bell notification for me, because I've got some big plans here for 2026, especially with this channel. So stay tuned, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.